You don't have to. I'll just tell them what my experience is.
Okay, if everyone will come in and have a seat, we're about ready to start our second session of this Pack the Pew evening. We appreciate everyone's staying and being a part of this evening. We have with us Joe Antelock, who will give us a brief introduction of himself. He can do it a whole lot better than I can because he knows himself better than I know him. But we're grateful to have him. He is very knowledgeable in the things he's going to be talking to us about tonight. The things that we need to know as Christians concerning the things we face on a daily basis with drug and alcoholism and substance abuse and those types of things. He's going to give you information that you can use to maintain your Christianity in a secular society that pushes these things to be okay and it's fine and it won't hurt you and those types of things. So I'm not going to say any more. I'll turn it over to Joe.
Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me back here? Briefly, I'll just tell you my experience. I started in 1992. I became a West Virginia State Trooper. I spent 4 years in uniform in Morgantown and worked the roads. And then after those 4 years, I was asked to become an investigator and do undercover drug work. And I did that for the next 15 years, 14 or 15 years. I think I had the longest running tenure as an undercover officer in the state police history. If not, it's up there close. Basically, I taught at the State Police Academy for approximately 10 years. I taught as an adjunct professor at Fairmont State in all the criminal justice classes. And if I had an expertise, it would be in drugs. That's what I did every day for almost every day. When you do a job like that, every single day it doesn't leave you. So I had a lot of good teachers and a lot of knowledgeable people around me who kept me safe. But I went to a lot of schools. I spent a lot of tax money to send me to schools and get me educated with the top on the East Coast. So tonight I'm just going to basically give you an overview of something that I think will be very beneficial to everybody in here. Nobody's immune from this. Everybody's been touched by drugs. I mean, whether we're sitting here in church or you're sitting, no matter where you sit. If you have family members and you're a productive member in this society, you've been affected by drugs in some way. So let me just begin. We'll just start into the PowerPoint. Go ahead. This was just a coin off of Nancy Reagan's 1980, "Just Say No." In this technology age, it's not like that anymore. The kids really want to know. And this has been geared more towards kids in school. But with that being said, they want to know. They need knowledge. So that's part of why this course was designed, and you'll see that in a second. Problem of drug abuse. We're in a war on drugs, and if you're going to fight a war of any type, you got to know the enemy. And the enemy right now is coming at us in different forms. We think we're immune, we go to the doctor. I had a recent conversation with somebody who said, it's a choice. You make that choice. In a lot of instances, you do. But some of the things that we overlook sometimes, I've had friends who've had accidents. They go out and ride motorcycles. They participate in contact sports. They get injured, they go see their doctor. Their doctor says, hey, here's some Lorcet, some Vicodin, some hydrocodones. It's going to take that pain away. They start taking those prescriptions, which are prescribed by your doctor, whom you trust, but you're still not immune. You still build up a tolerance. You can still build up an addiction to pharmaceuticals, which happens in many cases. In a lot of cases, you're pulled cold turkey. There's no counseling. There's no way to pull you off of those Percocets, whatever it is that's killing that pain for you. And a lot of those people end up searching out to fill that need that they have. And that's what I want to teach you about next after we get through this first page. We need to know about drugs. Where do they come from? How do they come? How do they affect us physically? And how do they affect our lives? Who deals drugs? And what are the reasons for dealing drugs? Go ahead. This presentation is to provide you with the knowledge so you can answer these questions and similar questions like why would somebody with such a bright future do something so stupid? And if they know how bad drugs are for you, why do they do them? And how do I know if my kid's on drugs? There is a drug problem, and with a thorough understanding of the problem, we have the knowledge to do something about the problem. We can do something in this war on drugs. This course is to assist a non-drug user. That's just a disclaimer that I put for colleges and things when I speak there, because I don't want you to go out and use some of the stuff I teach you to enhance your illegal drug business if you're involved in one. What I want to say about that is parents used to come to me all the time. How do I know if my kid's on drugs? Why would somebody with such a bright future? If you're a kid in high school, and I see a lot of young faces here, you can go from a high school setting if you play football on Friday nights, if you're a terrific musician and you play in band concerts, you get a lot of attention. There's a lot of attraction that you get on Friday nights. There's a lot of attraction that people come and see you. When you leave that setting and you go to a college, you've left that big fish in a small pond. Now you're a small fish in a big pond. Somebody comes up to you, you're not getting the attention on Friday nights. You're not the person that you were in high school in that clique and not getting the attention that you crave. So if somebody comes up and says, hey, here's a little white packet, or here's a joint, or here's whatever it is. You take this, and it's going to make you feel that same way you did on Friday night when you scored a touchdown, or when you performed at your best as a musician. So it allures them that way. And once you're started, that's when the tolerance builds up and you're addicted. So what I want to do right now, if we can just pause for a second, I like to be a little interactive. And please, if you have a comment or anything or have a question, don't hesitate. But if everybody would sit up straight and face me, I want you to understand kind of what we're dealing with, what I dealt with, and what somebody in the drug game is dealing with. If you'd put your hands beside you, please, if you have any medical issues, don't do this. And stop if you feel lightheaded or anything, but I would like you to try this exercise. When I say begin, I want you to start exhaling consistently, but slowly. And as you exhale your air, when you purge your lungs of all your air, I'd like to see you lean forward a little bit so I can see that you're purged of your air. Don't inhale until I ask you to inhale. It's not a damaging exercise. I just think it plays a good role. So when I say begin, start exhaling your air, and please keep trying to do that until I say inhale. If you're ready, begin exhaling. When you've purged your lungs, lean forward, and I'll know that you're out of air. And try to do the exercise. It makes sense at the end. Okay, hold it. 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, inhale. Now, if you really did that exercise and you concentrated on it, a lot of times I hear coughs. What was happening to your body and your brain at that point? When you were purged, and at the last second before I said inhale, what were you thinking? What was going on in your brain?
I need air.
Who said that? Great, Jamie. I need air. Breathe, stupid. I need air. Okay? So it's safe to say we're addicted to oxygen. We have to have it. You can't survive without oxygen. When you were purged out and you were wanting that oxygen, if for some reason all the oxygen in the room came up to me and was attracted to me, not because I'm malicious, just because it was attracted to me, what would you have done when you were bottomed out to get that oxygen back? You would have taken it, correct? You'd have done whatever you had to because you had to breathe. You needed that oxygen. That's the way a drug dealer feels, or a drug user, I'm sorry. That's the way an addict feels. It's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. They don't steal because they're thieves a lot of times. They don't steal, they don't lie, they don't cheat. A lot of times they wouldn't be that type of person, but they need to feel that need. They have that void that they have to fill, that chemical need that's part of their body chemistry now. And that's what they feel a lot of times. It's very similar to what you not having oxygen. That drug is their oxygen a lot of times. So as a police officer, when it would turn violent or turn into fights or somebody would pull, the instructors, the people who taught me said, don't take it personal. It's not personal against you. They have to fill that void. So I just thought that exercise, when that was done to me, I really thought it made sense and was applicable. When talking about drugs, here are some useful terms and definitions. Physical and psychological dependence. Does everybody know the difference? Yeah, if you don't know the difference, if you raise your hand. Physical is just your body needs it. It's part of your body chemistry. You're building up a tolerance. When you have a physical dependency, your body builds up a tolerance to that substance. And it takes more and repeated exposure to it to get the same effects that you had the first time. Psychological, you don't have to have it, but you think you do. You can get addicted to anything. The brain does not know the difference in addictions. You can get addicted to jogging. You can get addicted to eating. You can get addicted to... Brain does not know the difference between a good addiction and a bad addiction. Brain just knows addiction. And it tells your body how to respond. So if you're addicted to a drug, your brain tells your body, I need that. So psychologically, that's why you feel like you need it. You have to change that thinking. Flash or rush, that's the initial thrust of the effects of a drug. If I told you, is somebody in here play music, musical instrument? Okay, you play, what do you play?
I played the tuba growing up.
Okay, how long did it take you to teach the chords on, or teach the notes on a tuba?
Not very long.
Okay, once you learned them, what's everything you did after that point?
There's just a lot of chords and different technical practices and perfecting it.
Perfecting it, that's the word I was looking for. You trained. I can teach you everything you need to know about drugs in 5 minutes, and I'm going to attempt to do that. The lasting thing about it is, about what happens with our students, my belief, though, is education. I think our biggest combatant to the war on drugs is education. That's what we're doing here. I think spreading the word this way and understanding what they do is our best weapon. I think that's our best weapon. We know, I've been out there on the front lines, and I've seen what it does, and it's fingers in the dam. Just to give you an idea, the guy I worked with from the ICE unit was a Border Patrol agent. And we were trying to just see how much we really got in, how much we interdicted, or how many people we arrested, how much we were really taking off the streets by doing it the way we're doing it. Tractor trailer came through the border station, which he worked. And he was from WVU, and when he moved back here, we just started working a lot together, but he told me, they sent a 17-year-old boy in a tractor trailer. And it was just so obvious he was not going to make it through. They stopped him, they searched his truck, they found 400 pounds of a substance in the back of his truck, an illegal substance. It was too easy. They were high-fiving, the agents got together, they were high-fiving, and, hey, we did a good job, we took all this off the street. 3 trucks behind him was an older man who had 4,000 pounds of the same substance coming through, and they just waved him right through because they had the detention of the 400 pounds. So that's the type of things, we're not going to get them that way. We miss all the time. There's how many people incarcerated in this United States? A lot of them are in lockdown for 22 hours and 45 minutes a day. They get an hour for a rec, 15 minutes for a shower. Most of them eat in their cells. They're figuring out ways to beat it the next time. They're figuring out new ways. Methamphetamine, they believe it came from 2 prisoners with statistics and biology degrees in Iowa. That's where they think the recipe for methamphetamine originated. They were in jail, that's what they had to do. So that's what we're doing a lot of times. Okay, so let's start this. Right now, we should all be, excuse my back too, we should all be on the straight and narrow. If you're not under medication and you're sober-minded, let's represent that by this line right here. Every drug user, every single drug user has a first time that they use a drug. It's represented right here by the X. So after you use a drug, there's a lot of factors. Your weight, could be your age or your experience, your tolerance. T-O-L-E or A-R? Okay. But your weight, your age, your tolerance, what you've done that day. Your mind produces chemicals itself that are 10 times more potent than morphine. So if you get up one morning and you have a fight with a salesman in your neighborhood, or the dog went out and didn't come back, or you've changed your chemicals in your brain. Why can somebody get up and smoke crack for 20 years, do the same thing they've done for 20 years, and then they get up the one day and they hit the pipe and they're done. They expire that immediately because your chemicals change in your brain all the time. If you get excited, if you get a fight or flight syndrome, something happens, your body will release those potassium, cortisol to protect you, but it also changes your chemistry, so it also changes if you're ingesting something, like a drug. Okay, so every drug user does this. So we just saw up there and we just learned, what's this? What's this first thing that happens after you use a drug? That is the flash. That's the initial thrust of the effects of the drug. That's immediately when it hits your system. How it was introduced is very important. Methods: sniffing, mainlining, smoking, eating. Those are some of the ways, most of the ways that you get it into your system. Snorting is almost immediate. Inhaling is almost immediate. The things that are mainlining is immediate. Things that are slow are like ingesting through your mouth. If you swallow a pill or you swallow a substance, your stomach has to break it down. Your stomach has to break it down, so it takes a little bit longer. So depending on the quantity and the quality of the substance you're using, it's going to depend how long this flash or how long this rush and how intense it is going to last. So when you get past the rush, so let's say this takes 45 seconds. After that 45 seconds, you're going to come out into this plane, and we call that, you haven't seen that yet, that is the high. The high is just that lingering euphoric feeling you feel after the rush of a drug. Go ahead. Yeah, there's the high. After the flash of the rush, that's what you feel. Depending on all those things, on the strength of it, on how much you took, synergistic or polydrug using, if you took what you took. I mean, people, if you mix them, that's going to do this, how long that lasts, and how intense that is. So after the high, of course, you got to start coming back down. Does anybody know what that is? Hit another one. I think it's up there. Well, repeated exposure. We'll do that in a second. Next one. Okay. It's not up there. This is the withdrawal. You've began the withdrawal system. Your body doesn't have, that substance is leaving your body. So what happens to you? You get the shakes. You get nervous. Anxiety is heightened. You get paranoid. You may become violent. What's that word I'm looking for? You don't have any patience. So all those things can happen during the withdrawal cycle. Thing to remember is that as high as the high is as low as the low. You don't just come back down off a drug and go to your normal place. As high as you got, as low as you got to go. So you have to go all the way down here. And that's how it was explained, as high, as low as the low. You have to go through the whole cycle. Now you're going to return, hopefully back up to some stage when you stop. Back something close to normal. If you are a kind of experienced drug user, what's going to happen? Oh, probably about right here. What do you think is going to happen about right here? I want more. I don't want to feel this. This is where I itch and get paranoid and shake and get the heebie-jeebies. I don't want that. I want to try something else or try something more. So you use again. So as you start down into the withdrawal, you use and you start back up. But something not amazing, something funny happens. You find out the second time you used, if I was, I hope this doesn't offend, but I'm just going to be straight out. When somebody snorts a line of cocaine, that's about 1/10 of a gram. If you take a sweet and low packet when you get home and empty it, that's 1 gram. If you break that up in 10 equal lines, that's 1/10 of a gram. That's what somebody snorts. That's what it would look like if you break it up and show, and usually I have a folder to do that. If you did one line and did another line, this is what it's going to happen. And that we just learned up there is the tolerance. That's repeated exposure. If it's A or E. That's a tolerance. So what's going to happen when you use the second time, wow, that went really fast. So what do I want to do? I'm either going to increase the strength, I'm going to add a drug to it, or I'm going to strengthen the strength of it or the quantity of it, or I'm going to add something to it. So what do you have a very big risk of at that point? I didn't. Heart suicide, or not suicide, but overdose. There's when your overdose comes in. A lot of people always talk about two, just because it was in, when I started this, it was in my time, and this one, the speaker who taught me, told me, there was two basketball players. One name was Hank Gathers, and the other was Lenny Bias. Hank Gathers played for Maryland, or Loyola Marymount, and Lenny Bias played for Maryland. Lenny Bias was going to be on the front court with Larry Bird at the Boston Celtics. He had just signed like the first $1 million contract or something like that, a first big contract. He went out one night and little packet, that big, little packet of cocaine. Ended his career, shamed his college, shamed everybody around him. Knowing the drug game, I think he was a novice user. My personal opinion, if I would read the case, I would say he was probably a novice user. He probably did a dosage that was too high that his body couldn't handle. And a lot of these overdoses, I don't think they're experienced users. I think they're novice users, whatever that means. Hank Gathers, on the other hand, was Loyola Marymount. And he was taking a substance prescribed by his doctor, and his trainers found out when they reduced the measure, his dosage unit, his play improved. So as the course of the next couple of weeks, they kept reducing his drug. He kept playing better, but he had a heart attack and died on the floor because they took too much of his drug away. The reason I tell that story is we're not going to escape it. They have to be here. We have to have drugs. They're important to us for healing and for other reasons. But on the bad side of it, the knowledge is just, we can't beat the knowledge. And I'm saturating right now. I'm sorry, I jumped around there a little bit, but if you'd go ahead. But there's your everything you need to know about drugs. Anything's going to fall into this, probably except LSD. LSD has no addictive qualities. LSD doesn't have addictive qualities. But if you want to talk about any Schedule 1, Schedule 2, or Schedule 3 drug, any narcotic, everything's going to fall in there. Alcohol's going to fall in there. Any drug substance. That's drug abuse when drugs have caused physical or mental health to be altered. Maturation is impaired. The important thing, could you go back? I think something very important that we're in the midst of right now is the marijuana legalization agenda. And I didn't want to start this until later, but I'd like to mention it. All these three things happen, you can see happen in regular marijuana users. But the maturation process is the one that I think is important, that's overlooked a lot with young people. If you're in your adolescent years and you're maturing, your brain grows inside of your head. It grows to fit inside of your head. Marijuana has over 400 chemicals, 90 of them are fat soluble. Fat soluble just means when you go to the bathroom, they don't leave your system. Those 90 chemicals stay in and they collect around the fatty areas of your body, your brain, reproductive organs, any fatty area that you have, around your heart. And if they're not leaving your system, then they're there taking up space and they're doing some kind of damage. I wasn't around when cocaine was legalized to use as a Schedule 2 drug. Schedule 2 just means it has a medical use. Wasn't around Procaine, Lidocaine, Novocaine, all those canes that numb you for a local anesthetic, or dentist shoots in your mouth. Those are all cocaine, cocaine-based substances. Wasn't around when they legalized that. I'm not going to have much to say between doctors prescribing marijuana, but in the outside world, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it's good. I think I've done over 1,000 interviews, way over 1,000 interviews of marijuana with young people and parents, and I've never had one positive parent come in and say, hey, my child has really perked up smoking marijuana. It's not happened, and I'm telling you, it's probably 2,000 to 5,000 I've done. I dealt with that drug every day. There's not one day that I can remember in my career that I didn't have that drug on my mind, at least one or 2 minutes out of that day, because it was so prevalent. And I've not seen anything positive come out of it. Now, if there's a medical use that they find for it, that wouldn't have anything to do with me. That's a doctor-patient relationship, and that's protected, and that's between a doctor and a patient. And out in the society, though, for a blanket legalization, if we had time, I would take you through heroin, because it's scary how they how they pale in comparison. Almost identical path that heroin took to become legal by the Bear Aspirin Company is the same path marijuana's taking right now, and it's very scary. To reduce all kinds of pain, social, personal, physical, and to increase pleasure. When we were talking about why would somebody with such a bright future do something so stupid, and I told you, you have somebody on campus who gives them one thing, and I'm going to let you feel the same way you did on Friday night, that's definitely one reason. The pain, the social, personal, and physical pain, we're hedonistic. We're hedonistic. We're in a society that's hedonistic, especially in America. We are pleasure seekers. We're daredevils. We're thrill seekers. Some of them seek that through drugs. But the personal and physical pain, that's something self-explanatory. I think it's self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Am I moving too fast? Okay. External factors, it's available, it's out there. Peer pressure, it does exist. I mean, if friends hanging around, run. You don't have to give a reason. There was a commercial on about 10 years ago, and it was a father coming in talking to his son, but you didn't know that they were father and son. He was kind of dressed up, and the son was there, and he would come up, and he was harassing him, and he was trying to get him to take something. And he was practicing with his son on how to say no. And I always liked that commercial. I wish there was more of them. Because he practiced with his son how to say no. You don't have to be uncomfortable saying no. Walk away. Leave. Walk away. That is one day in your life that could change your whole future. The drugs out there, if you went to sleep in 1970 and you were a heroin user, the strength that you got on the street from a street dealer was probably 5 to 15% pure. If you went out today and purchased it, I've actually purchased in Morgantown, 85 to 100% pure on the street from street level dealers. It's went up that much. So if you fell asleep in 1970 and you were taking a dosage and you got up today and took that same dosage, it'd be a golden spike immediately. It'd probably kill you immediately because the strengths have went up so much. And it doesn't change. Heroin was here in the 70s. It made a comeback in the 80s. It disappeared for a while. It came back in the 90s. It disappears. They come and go. The trafficking does that. Internal factors. Immaturity cannot cope with reality, and it's a means of escape. We are hedonistic. We are pleasure seekers. Curiosity and experimentation. Search for personal or religious insights. Nothing new about trying to communicate with the gods in nature. If you know some Indian tribes, they use that. They have a very interesting take on marijuana also. Law enforcement's primary functions: arrest suspects, remove supplies from the market, and educate. And like I said, number 3, I think is the most important. I think it's the most important right now, the best tool that we have. Control measures: interdiction, regulatory functions, intelligence gathering, and international services like Interpol. And the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1915 was important because that was the cornerstone for all of our federal drug laws. Harrison Narcotics Act came about because of the Civil War at the turn of the century, 1900s. When the Civil War was happening, the implements in the battlefield were very crude, to say the least. So if somebody got injured in the battlefield and they were treated in the battlefield, the injuries a lot of times got infected and they treated by pain medication, which was morphine. So when the soldiers came back, they had a thing called soldier's disease. And about 1907, they saw a lot of soldier's disease, and it was a morphine addiction. So as I said a few minutes ago, the Bear Aspirin Company came up with the hero, or heroin, and said it was absolutely non-addictive. And they marketed it and said to give it to colicky babies. It was an over-the-counter products. Take it to sleep. Take it for melancholy. take it for all these reasons, and it was heroin. And who knew back then that the problem that we have with just heroin today? But that was a cornerstone. We didn't have anything new in drug legislation until the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Control Act of 1970. This was during the Nixon years. Scheduled drugs, tables 1 through 5. I think the most important thing to remember is 1 is the most dangerous. Has the highest addictive, you have the most ability to be addictive to Schedule 1, and it has no medical use. That's the important thing, is it most addictive, most dangerous. Number 2 has a medical use. Schedule 2 has a medical use. When you get down to Schedules 3, 4, and 5, you're going to look for what you see up there: Vicodins, Lorcet, some hydrocodones, which are still very dangerous drugs, but they're of weaker strength. Okay. The drug is defined of any compound that affects functioning of an organism. Alcohol and nicotine are still the most widely used and abused drugs. Caffeine is also a widely used drug. One thing about caffeine that's hitting the market: technology has allowed us to strengthen everything. The Monsters, the energy drinks, Red Bulls, and those type of things, very dangerous, very dangerous. OD possible, but if you have anything wrong with your heart or your circulatory system, it speeds that up. And you understand the difference. Like, cocaine is a stimulant, and a stimulant just means your heart's beating like this. So when you overdose on a stimulant, your heart's either going to explode or it's just going to beat so fast that it will sit there and quiver. We've actually watched pictures of somebody in overdose, and they split you open on a stimulant, and the doctor was reaching in and actually massaging the heart. And they showed you the heart, and it was just there quivering from an overdose on a stimulant. On a depressant like heroin, you just get the nods or the bends, and you just go to sleep, and your heart just beats down and beats slow until it stops beating. Those are the two differences: a stimulant and a depressant. The illicit drugs, just because a drug's legal or illegal does not mean you cannot be addicted to it. Crosses all boundaries, both legal and illegal. We've said that. Go ahead. Yep. No, there's tons of them there. Let me do one more thing. I won't go through each drug, but go clear to the pictures. Let's run through those real fast. That'll be it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I went backwards.
Yeah, you can go backwards, probably get to it. Does anybody have any questions? I'm glad Andy, I haven't talked in a while, but I'm glad Andy invited me here tonight. I hope some of the stuff we say is beneficial. Yeah.
So if someone did make a mistake and try drugs, what should they do then?
Yeah, just turn away from it. I mean, you have to stop. Don't let it can't become part of your personality. Get a new hobby. Replace it. The thing right now with drug, and I failed to mention, what's one of the resolves to it? If you have somebody that's addicted to a drug, you can't replace a drug with a drug. It's not going to work. Not that I've seen in my experience. Replace it with something, with a hobby that's good. You have to replace it with something. You just can't stop taking. An alcoholic just can't stop drinking. He has to replace it with something. It has to be replaced. And there's no better place to replace it than here. Go ahead, keep going. You're going to see pictures here in a second. What I'm looking for here is just, it has some comparison pictures, and this was meth. But on the long version of this, we go through every drug. Keep going, all the way down. Right there, start there, yeah. There's a sheriff's department, I can't remember the name of it, but they kept running tabs, and I thought back of the people I dealt with several times. And this is this is what it looks like. It really is. Go ahead. Every two, you get to now next one. Go back, yeah. Every other slide is a picture. Okay. 5 years later, these were methamphetamine.
How do those people get back to a clean life that have lived that addicted
rehab. A lot of them 12-step programs, rehab. If a person's addicted to heroin, I've used heroin. I've talked about heroin a lot tonight because it's been prevalent. But if a person's addicted to heroin, they're always said to be a recovering addict. You're never over that. You're always, for the rest of your life, a recovering addict. And what that means is there's certain people you can't be around, streets, smells, sights. There's a lot of things that are triggers to a heroin addict. And it's like I said, it's as simple as could be anything. I just started looking into that. And the CBD oil now, the ones without any THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, delta THC9, that's the active ingredient in marijuana. They don't exist those. The cannabinoids, they say there's doing a lot of, I wish Chris was here because we went back and forth, talked a lot about this. And he says that they're, and I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, but the ones without THC, where's your husband at? Where's Chris Field at? Huh? Oh, I wish he would have came. It would have been stimulating conversation for us all to hear us go back and forth. Without the THC, they say the cannabinoids and the receptors in the brain are accepting those, and they say that they're stopping seizures, they're stopping a lot of different things. I've followed this since probably the early 80s, and I can tell you the path that I've seen. In Proposition, I think it's 92 or 87, California Proposition 92 or 87, whichever one it is, you can look it up. They sent out to legalize marijuana. When they sent out, they wanted medical marijuana. That's what they wanted, medical marijuana. They put their feelers out. They started the agenda. They sent back, well, it has no medical use because they found out people who had cancer and smoked marijuana, you don't actually die from cancer. You die something that you get while you have cancer. Cancer beats up your immunity system so bad, something else fails. People who use marijuana that have cancer have a lot more, and I want to say, I don't want to put a number on it because I'm not exactly sure. It's like 40% to get bacterial pneumonia or some other disease because of their weak immune system. So their life expectancy if you smoke marijuana is shorter. Now, does it help them eat and stuff? I've not seen it. Like I said, I've not seen it. I've looked at some of the stuff and I've not seen it. I've talked to several doctors. I've not seen it. The HIV, people who have HIV move to full-blown AIDS faster if they use marijuana. So after the fingers went out and they put their feelers out and they got information back, the medical society, the AMA, went back to California and said, listen, there's no medical marijuana because it's not going to treat, it's not going to prevent, and it's not going to cure any disease. So California came back at them and sent another bill through and said, we want mercy marijuana. We don't want medical marijuana, we want mercy marijuana. We want people who are close to death to be able to have marijuana so they can use it to feel better as they pass. So that was the other angle. And it's been going on since that day. It's been going on, and that legalization and that agenda it's still today. But I can only say this, common sense we should always use. Marijuana's seen it all. George Washington, when this country was founded, George Washington had marijuana. He grew it. There's a lot grown on the south branch of the Potomac River right now. It's real low THC content, but that's where they had, for World War II, for textiles, for products that we used. Shirts, whatever, clothing, whatever it was. So there's a lot of it, but it's a real low THC content. It's seen it all, though. Wouldn't we know after 200 years if it had benefits? I just like to look at the common sense of it, and I've not seen. Now the CBD oils, if they can isolate those with our technology and it helps, that's doctor-patient. But like I said, for somebody that's growing, a high school student or somebody, I've never had one positive conversation. So now how do I know if my kid's on drugs? There's going to be something. It's putting a puzzle together. One thing doesn't mean, I could make you a list of about 15 things. Man, I've told Mom, do you wash his clothes? Yeah, well, look at his clothes. Do they smell funny? Do they have burn holes in them? What's his physical appearance? Has he changed friends? Or are his grades fallen? Does he sleep? Well, he used to be so affectionate, he'd get up and kiss me goodnight every night, and he'd get up and he'd give me a hug in the morning before school. Now he doesn't even talk to me. He stays in his room. He's got posters of drug smokers, of hard punk rockers and people who use drugs in that scene. Does that mean he's a user? No. What you're doing is putting a puzzle together. He's got money that I can't explain. He's got Visine in his dresser. He's got potpourri under his bed. He's never had that before. Cover scents, whatever it is. One thing doesn't make him that, but you start putting the puzzle together, and I used to explain to parents, you've got to put that puzzle together. That's how you're going to find out if your kid's on drugs. They'll become secretive. They'll have unexplained money. They'll have burns on their fingers. They'll have burns on their clothes. They'll smell funny. They'll wear glasses. They'll change friends. They'll put up posters. They'll start listening to different music. There'll be a lot of things that happen if they're using, and that's the way a parent can see if they have somebody who's near and dear to them that's using. That's, yeah, you hit the other two and I'm done. Is that time?
We got about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. There's another one 7 months later. These people were on meth. These are intense drugs, and like I said, they think it came from two chemists. Did I say biology? Chemistry. A chemistry and statistic majors, two guys that housed together in an Iowa prison. The fastest growing meth users in the United States. What class of people? Anybody guess? Caucasian, middle-aged housewives. About the ages of 25 to 35. That was the fastest growing. Why? Anybody guess why? Say it again, Steph. That's one. Get all their work done. Lose weight. Lose weight, get all their work done.
It's a stimulant.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. 3 years, 5 months later. That's what it looks like. Used to hold a board up that showed about 6 different white powders. You can't distinguish which is which. It looks like the Geico guy. Would you go back one? Now the information there. More than 12 million Americans have tried methamphetamine, and 1.5 million are regular users. I thought that was an amazing statistic. It's what, 300 million people in the United States? That was a funny thing that when going through and learning about drugs and going to all these schools and doing all the education that I had on it, plus working the street, it was amazing to find out how many things that geography. If you want to talk about geography and drugs, you're in the middle of north central West Virginia, and you have a claim that nobody in the United States, in the continental United States, can make the same claim. You are closer to 10 major cities than anybody else in the continental United States. You have 10 major cities that are closer to you than anybody else. Think about in 6 hours where you can be, turn around and come back. Carolinas, all of our 5 sister states, Maryland, Ohio, you could be almost in New York in 6 hours. So on a 12-hour turnaround, if there's drugs in New York coming into South Street Seaport, and you hear of a big bust of meth or cocaine or whatever it is, it's here. If it's there, it's here. People leave all the time, and they turn around. 12 hours, they're back. But if it's around you, if you hear about it in Maryland or Columbus, Ohio, or London, Kentucky, it's here. It's not just there, it's here. A lot of people trust the mountains.
What city or town in West Virginia is the highest number of drug users? Like according to
Huntington. Huntington's probably the most dangerous city in West Virginia. That's my guess, but we did a lot down there. Of course, working undercover, there was only 55 guys that did the job I did from the state police, and probably only about 30 of us did actual undercover. And we used to call and have talk. I was classmates. He was actually my roommate, and we both did undercover, and he worked down south. But it was morbidly funny that I called him one night, and I said, hey, Jeff, I did 4 buys. I did 4 undercover buys in one day in Morgantown. I bought crack 4 different times off 4 different people in one day. And I was like, wow, I came back to the office. I was like, I've done it. I've done it all now. I called Jeff and I said, hey, how's Huntington going? I said, how you guys doing down there? Because they were having a bad problem. He said, well, he said, I made 22 hand-to-hands today. He made 22 hand-to-hand buys in one day. 22, 24, whatever it was. But they were buying it. That's how wide open it was down there. And the only reason I say that is to tell you, it's a culture, it's different. You're not going to run into them a lot. If you venture out to seek them, you're going to find them a lot. But it's there, it's that prevalent. We're lucky, I don't know. We're blessed, I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't happen more, but it's here, it's here. Just don't, if my kid came home and said, I saw this at school, I'd probably believe them. If they said I saw a kid crushing up pills, I would probably believe them. You know, crushing up pills on their desk or using it in the bathroom or smoking a joint or something in the bathroom, I'd probably believe them. You know, because it's prevalent. How many high school kids in here? No Dixon. So, in the schools, Chief, you ever see any? Rumors a lot. Dixon, same thing. It's there. I mean, it's there. It's on the other side of it, but I hope you never do.
There's a couple guys that are partner around here and there, or is it coming from some big outfit?
Meth was a poor man's cocaine, and the bikers used to use it. It was called crank, and they believe it got its name because the bikers, Hell's Angels in California, used to put it in their crankcase to traffic it across the Golden Gate Bridge. So they think it got its name that way. There's several methods to make it. There's Nazi methods to make it. There's bathtub meth. There's all different types of ways to make it. If you have a phosphorus cook, it's called a red pea phosphorus cook. You'll have somebody they call cooker, and you have to be an experienced cooker to make meth because red phosphorus is a very dangerous substance. If it turns red and gases up, in parts per million, it can kill you. If it turns white and you don't condense it and keep it cool, it becomes highly explosive. That's why you always see these people were making meth and their house explodes or they catch on fire. The house catches on fire because red phosphorus is you strike a match, the striker, not the match, but the striker. You know, the piece that feels like sandpaper that you run the match across, that's red phosphorus. Red phosphorus is contained in that. They'll take that out and soak it in an alcohol solution chemical and melt all that phosphorus off of there. But the DEA has restricted so many of those substances that we do import a lot more now. There's not as much because you can't buy ephedrine anymore. How many people have went to get ephedrine and they make you sign, or cold medicine or something? Yeah, DEA has put a stop to all those and restricted those. So we get a lot more imported now. It's harder to make because the chemicals aren't there.
Do you think a lot of it is coming from around Detroit? Because
Like,
it seems like on the news, every time you listen to the news, a lot of it is they arrest somebody from Detroit.
yeah.
In Pennsylvania and Maryland.
The thing that I look at to determine an investigation, when I was investigating, we watched South America a lot. I told you I worked with ICE, and the guy worked on the actual border. The DOJ puts out a reader every year, and it's called the Threat Assessment. And every year, the Department of Justice puts out a threat assessment, and it tells you, and with a security clearance, you can get that magazine and you can look through it. And they tell you what trafficking trends were for the year before. And they tell you the threats that are upcoming, so you can, you know. With ecstasy, we had a problem with ecstasy back 10 years ago. The trafficking methods were brand new. Ecstasy was being produced in Middle Eastern countries like Iran for a penny a pill. It was being shipped across, and it was coming into New York, and we had not seen those it was new. It was new to the agents. It was new to people because drugs had not been trafficked that way before. It was the first time they had seen it. But the markup, it went from there to New York. When it hit New York, it was probably, the first guy, probably $10 a pill. I did 55,000 pills in Morgantown, West Virginia, and it was $25 a pill. Now, going back to what you said, international waters down south, they were bringing tons and tons, actual tons and tons of marijuana, and they were coming up the California coast, the West Coast, and coming into California into hangars, and they were storing in hangars and stuff. When international waters started being patrolled, we started patrolling American waters, national waters. They started catching them, the Navy, what's the subsection of the Navy? Coast Guard. Coast Guard started catching them. They were going clear around. If this was the United States, if this was the coast of California, they were coming from South America, going clear around and coming into Canada this way. And that was on the threat assessment. 5,000 Border Patrol agents patrolled this area, the Mexico, Texas, Arizona line. 500 patrolled this in Canada that separated the United States. So that's, you know, if you think about it, if you got meth or some strong substance coming in and you're coming in this way, what would be one of the cities that would be real close? Detroit would be there.
You know, when I was in the service, I seen every cotton picking thing you could name. And it's what you showed me there, they taught us in the service about drugs and all that too. But what I'm saying is, you know, I've played sports all my life. And I had drugs passed in front of me. I chose not to do it because I thought about my health.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen too many of them in there. And I seen one boy down the hall from me playing Russian roulette. You can understand what happened to him.
Yeah.
And it's a bad thing.
Yeah, you said the service.
I just say that because these kids are here.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to reinforce exactly what you're saying, and I think you're exactly right. The service was probably the first time you were away from home. Wasn't it? Was it? Yeah. When these kids leave for college, it's a new ball game. The people who are talking to you, you have to be selective who you run around with, who your mentors are. Because if you're going with a gang of kids up there and you're not serious about your grades or getting done in school, Taylor, you have to make your schedules because there's a lot of people that are just lurking. They're just waiting. I mean, it's right out there. They're out there now. They're just waiting for somebody new. Especially they'll give the first little bit away. Once they have you hooked, you'll sell for them, do whatever you have to for them. Because again, you need that oxygen. But it's the first time they're away.
What about those electric cigarettes and the vaping and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff? I mean,
Jules.
they've got all them flavors and everything that they use. I don't know anything about them, but I mean, you read about it and you see it all the time.
You know, I haven't seen a lot of it. I haven't done a lot of it. When I was teaching at the tech center, we saw it some. It causes a thing that what I've read on it is it causes cauliflower lung. Is it cauliflower or popcorn? I think it's popcorn lung, and it just eats away at your lungs and makes it look like popcorn and puts all these crevices in it.
They're
It's
slipping
dangerous.
Slipping that,
Marijuana,
cannabis oil or
yeah.
whatever it is into it now and causing even more
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, and I know that they've had, and like I said, I've not really studied that a lot. I'll have to brush up on that because I'm not really much aware of it. I don't understand it. I didn't understand it. I understood it after they said they were putting marijuana oil in it, they're getting high, but I didn't understand it. It was easily concealed too.
Pregnant mother on drugs, how does that affect the baby?
If it's a drug that crosses the placenta barrier, crack cocaine crosses a placenta barrier. If it crosses the placenta barrier, then the baby also gets what the mother gets. And crack cocaine does do that. A crack baby, if a mother smokes crack during pregnancy, breaking down crack, cocaine base, crack is just cocaine returned to the base form. Okay, it has no impurities in it, it's pure drug. And it crosses a placenta barrier, the baby gets it. So these babies are born addicted to the substance that the mother was using.
How would that affect the child when it gets to be
It's
3 and 4 years old?
Depending, that would better be answered by a doctor, but in layman's terms, when they withdraw, kids are very versatile. Your body's very forgiving when you're young. I mean, it's a lot forgiving when you're young as far as drug use goes. As you get older, your body can't tolerate, but if they remove that kid from that, they can rehab a kid easier than they can an adult because the kid doesn't know. The baby doesn't know that this is not the way it's supposed to be. If that can put that in layman's terms. It can go on to be fine though, unless it's suffered brain damage or some kind of cardio.
And some of those children that are now entering
I wonder the same thing about marijuana. I said a few minutes ago, there's 90 chemicals that are fat soluble. And if it's sticking around your brain and it's sticking around your heart and your reproductive organs, who's to say it's not skipping a generation? It doesn't leave you. I mean, is your next generation born with it? And the generation after that, is it in your system now? Is it part of your DNA? That's why I'm so suspect of marijuana. I think it's one of the, it scares me because the subtlety of it, and I know the history of heroin.
I can tell you what it does, because I'm a teacher in elementary school. My second graders are bath salt babies, and my kindergartners are their opioid meth kids. And you can tell, it's obvious, those kids' stuff is not connecting, and we're trying to teach them. And then you have the whole thing with, I just spent last week in training for trauma, kids with trauma. Kids being born into homes where their parents are messed up on drugs and alcohol, and the trauma that they're dealing with, and how it changes their brain chemicals. They show brain scans of all this stuff. I mean, it's sad. It's horrible sad. That's how I spent 2 days in training about all this, and they're having changeable cultures of how schools are, because what worked for us is not what works anymore, because these kids are coming completely screwed up.
Let me say this before I forget. She just hit on something, again, I like to hit the high points and the most important things. Let me pick out something. Mark Anderson, I see you back there. Can you please tell me, I know you went to school probably before I did, what was your drug education in school?
Drug condition, marijuana was just starting at Fairmont State in 1970. It was almost non-existent. First time that I ever smelled that putrid smell, I went to journalism school in Athens, Ohio. I never even smelled it prior to that.
So you had no drug information in school at all?
Zero,
Mark?
which is good.
Stutler, what'd you have? Did you have drug information in school? What did they give you in school as far as training or drug education?
Talked a little bit about alcohol as a drug. It was just becoming vogue to mention those two things in one breath.
Has anybody ever had a comprehensive or intensive course in drugs in school? I mean, I was a Safe Schools coordinator here for 5 years, and I did Red Ribbon Week every week in October, every year I was there. And it's never been put on. If you want to give a kid a gift, this is again, just my experience. If you want to give a kid a gift, give them a comprehensive learning on drugs when they're in the 6th grade, before they go to the 7th grade. Refresh it. When we were talking about the tuba earlier, it doesn't take long to learn. Once you learn the chords, the rest of the time you spend with your guitar, your tuba, or your musical instrument, you're training, you're practicing. If you're a football player, I can teach you to throw in 2 minutes. The rest of the time you're training and practicing. That's the same thing with drugs. I can teach you everything you need to know in 5 minutes. It's the training afterwards. Take these kids in the 6th grade, give them education. When they go to the 7th grade, refresh it when they get there. Let them go through their 7th grade, refresh it in the 8th grade. Now give them a little more intensive course, 2-day course before they go to high school. Hey, this is what you're going to see. This is what the kids are acting like. This is what drugs are here. They get in the 9th grade, refresh it. Their next couple of years while they further their education. And when they're a senior in high school, give them a comprehensive to say, hey, you're going out into the big world. You're going out into college. Here's what you're going to see. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how people approach you. Here's how you get out of it. These are the areas that are the hot spots. They need education.
Has this not been brought to the Board of Education that this is critical for our kids?
Oregon,
Are they,
every school in Marion County does drug elimination.
Okay.
They all did.
Schwab, no, I can't hear you. Say it again.
critical to our kids that they don't?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask any of them, they'll tell you they've had speakers come in to their schools, they've had assemblies, they've had Red Ribbon Week, they've had, to sign a pledge. It's being done in Marion County, it's just not always consistent.
Right.
They tell the kids, they educate the kids what to look for in their parent, and tell them what to report to the parent. To the teacher if their parent is
I offered,
a problem.
yeah, it's way far behind where we should be. I worked on this myself. I mean, I had even the people there. It's hard to get the board to accept we're going to spend hours and spend curriculum on this time. A couple of years ago, I'm going to use Stephanie. You don't mind if I I offered the teachers. When I started teaching in this county, I was awestruck at how little our teachers knew about drugs and recognizing an abuser and recognizing a kid on drugs and the smell of a drug. Every trooper, every police officer that came in, for 7 years I taught every police officer that came into the state on illicit and illicit drugs. And I did a controlled burn every time. Every class that I ever taught, I did a controlled burn so they could smell what it looked like. And we did the exercise that you did when we began this class. Gave them every bit of information we could have. Going back to Stephanie, she called me a couple of years ago and said, hey, all the alternative learning center teachers are getting together at Stonewall. You know, would you come down? And I did this almost exact same PowerPoint. I've only tweaked it a little bit. But there was 87 teachers, and they all got that information. And this is not me. This is not because I had good teachers. There was a lot of money spent to send me to advanced investigator school and advanced narcotics education and to teach in Charles. There was a lot of money spent to do that. And I don't feel like, I feel I need to pass it down because it's not because it's what they taught me. And I believe it's valuable information. I sat and talked to all 87 teachers, but it only happens in alternative learning. There's no drugs happening in the mainstream public schools. I say that, yeah, okay. I say that sarcastically because they had the education, but our teachers didn't have it, and it was unfair to the teachers. And there was offers to do it, several.
So they had a whole full day of training for handle of care.
We had two, didn't we, Stephanie?
They just had it this year.
Oh, you're talking about, okay, with the public school.
Schools and several other public counties sent their teachers to handle with care, which is, it is dealing with trauma, but it also will educate them on, you know, what's going on in the drug world.
Yeah.
But I'm sure some of them are in here, they'll tell you they have to go train.
Well, I like the DOJ, I just said the DOJ, the threat assessment. I thought there should be one countywide. I thought that the board, there should be a crew to get together with police officers. I attended those meetings. There's a emergency service meeting every month, and I went to the majority of them. And I thought at that meeting we should set up a threat assessment for the schools and pass it to the principals and let the principals, it's their school, they're responsible, let them give it to their teachers to decide what to disseminate among their other teachers and their kids.
A lot of people, I think the big reason why they try things is it'll never happen to me. Is the thing that people say, I've got it controlled or whatever. But a helicopter crashed in California today, and one of the most famous people that had the world by the hand died. And wasn't due to drugs, but somebody died that wasn't expecting it. But I could probably name off 3 or 4 dozen either athletes or movie actors, musicians that all died due to overdoses. There are dozens of them. When you start adding up the people like Heath Ledger and Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, and you can go back, like I said, there's dozens of them.
Yeah.
We
Janis
sit here
Joplin.
for a while, and many of them die in their teens and their 20s. And it's all because, I doubt many of them set out to die. It's probably, they thought, hey, I got the world by the hand, it isn't going to be me. And mess with that stuff, it could definitely be.
Again, and I saw a couple of people that are in here there. I attended a funeral last week of an overdose. My family we've attended 3, well, my daughters and myself have attended 3 overdose funerals and none of them were over 30 in the last year. And there's been about 6 to 10 here in the immediate area. And they're all overdoses.
And if these kids say, well, I'm just gonna try it this one time, like you said, it's not the right dosage, it's too much, it's not what you think it is, and you don't get the second chance.
Mm-hmm.
What's the recidivism rate once it gets a hold of you?
Neighborhood of 75%. 75% recidivism rate. If I see you once, if I arrest you once if you're arrested once for drugs, I say me, I act like I still work. I don't work anymore. If you're arrested once, 75% chance we're going to see you again behind drugs. The only way a person who rolls can get back to their lifestyle is to roll again.
What are bath salts?
Who was talking about bath salts? It's a synthetic made substance that was supposed to mimic. They were trying to make like a meth or like a cocaine. All the synthetic drugs try to mimic one of the real drugs. Like cocaine's not a narcotic. They call it a narcotic for legal purposes, but cocaine comes from the coca plant. All narcotics come from the poppy plant through morphine, opiates, opioids. Bath salts are stuff that they took in a chemical lab, and they threw these guys, like I said, in jail. That's what they're doing. These chemists that made up meth, they put these recipes together and they try them out. I don't know if it's trial and error or not, but that's how they came up with bath salts. What's the one that was now that people get really whacked out and they see, not fentanyl. It was they had it in Florida. Well, it might have been bath salts. Yeah. Was that bath salts? Yeah. Okay. And there's variations of it. I mean, there's variations of it because any chemical, no two chemists are the same. Hey, I'm gonna put a little more of this or a little less. I'm gonna put more red devil lye in it or put a little less of, phosphorus in it, and it's gonna make a difference. Yeah, those are chemicals, and they're so volatile, you can't even test what they're going to be doing. I mean, there was the one that hit Morgantown years back was ketamine, and there was another one that was so bad that doctors pulled tissue samples, and it went through the body and did its destruction, but it dissolved so fast that they couldn't even find it in tissue samples, and they were pretty sure that the cause of death was overdose. And it was ketamine and something else. What was that drug? I want to say it was like bath salts, but it went through and did its destruction, and even with tissue samples, they weren't getting a good read of what it was, and it was causing deaths, and it had caused deaths. Don't know what it was. It wasn't that, but I would know if I heard it. But I thought it was a mixture of ketamine and something. I'm done. If anybody has no questions, thank you all for listening. I hope it was beneficial. Hope I didn't saturate and scatter too much. Kind of excited because I haven't done this in a while. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Round of applause. Thank you, Joe, for coming. It's been beneficial.